trans people and queer people in general are so exploited by media and by culture. There's no question of why suicide rates are so high.
It's 10 years later and it's just way worse.
You would think that it's like an epidemic, like a new COVID, and it's just not. It's a phobia. They live in fear. They've got time and money on their hands to just sit and scroll on the internet and just spew hate and to put court cases forward. And we just want to live. I've been in horrific experiences, hate crime, like with people stood there watching. It is terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying when you think of that moment where you look around and no one helps you. It's like, to be neutral in situations of oppression is to side with the oppressor. When you see something happening and you do nothing, you are... Hi, Helen.
Hi.
I'm Bobby. I am a theatre producer and fundraiser. Also kind of work across live arts. I've spent the last couple of years producing and fundraising queer-led, trans-led art, performance. It crosses a multitude of different genres. And I've loved it, totally fallen in love with it. And then outside of that as well, I'm also the fundraising lead for London Trans Plus Pride.
Cool.
So that's kind of where my, I want to say where my heart lies. And I feel that, it's like I really, really, really love it. And then I'm originally from Walsall, near Birmingham.
Okay.
Yeah, trans non-binary, use they, them pronouns.
Cool. Well, I'm Dr. Helen Webberley, she, her pronouns. I'm cisgender, but I kind of stumbled into the world of transgender people when I had my first, I don't know whether it was my first, but my first visible transgender patient back in 2015. And I was a GP in a surgery in Wales. And this trans lady came in and said, would I help her? And I'm like, I don't know how to do that. Yeah. I never got taught how to do that. No idea. Because it's not something we were taught in medical school or in my youth. I kind of came across gender identity very much. And so I started exploring transgender identity and healthcare. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, it's awful, awful. And so I created Gender GP. It started off as just a little website for sharing all the knowledge that I was learning because I was so fascinated. And then it just grew. And then it grew into a patient base where I was helping people. And then I got targeted and attacked.
Yeah, you did.
And so did my husband. And it was all the shit hit the fan, as they say. And I always used to say it will only be a couple of years because things are going to get better because we've identified that healthcare for trans people is rubbish. So it's going to get better now. And I'm like, it's 10 years later and it's just way worse. Sorry, people out there, but it's a tricky time at the moment. I was in a restaurant the other day, a cafe at lunchtime, and there was this older guy and he was asking, there was a black waitress and he was saying to her, where are you from? And she's like, I'm from Enfield. And he was like, no, where are you from? And she's like, I just told you. And she wasn't going to have any of it. And he's like, no, I mean, where were you born? And she's like, in Enfield. And it just went on. And at the end, she said, this is real micro racism you're dishing out here. And he was like, no, I'm just interested. I'm just being polite to you. And it's, so she had that kind of visibility of being a black person and was being targeted for it. And I was really interested watching it because that's what happens, isn't it? Sometimes, when people see difference, it's targeted. And I want to see a world where it doesn't matter. No one's noticed anything. You're just a person. Yeah. How do we get there?
Yeah, 100%. And how do we support each other to get there as well? It's like when we see those interactions, when we see those things happening, when do we call it out? When do we support that person who we can see as clearly, because we relate to that. You don't have to be black to see that and understand that what is happening to that woman, what is happening is it's just reducing her to something that she's not, that she doesn't want to be, that that she just isn't. And I think it's really interesting that you just said that, I was just being polite thing, because I get that. Yeah. I get that. I got freedom of speech, or I'm being polite, or I'm just asking a question. And it's these weird buzz phrases that go around. And it's like, I think it's really important that we get the courage to be like, but you're not.
That's not polite.
Weren't. That's not what's happening. It's not polite. It's not empathetic. It's not how a society should run. And it's not how you would want to be treated. It's crazy. It's like you wish you could just get some of these TERFs, these transphobes, whoever they are, to walk a day in the shoes of like a trans woman, and what they go through, the vitriol that they get on the scale that they get it is like, it is terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. And, you know, there's no question of why suicide rates are so high and why mental health is in the gutter and why it's so hard to sustain jobs and get high paid work. Because if you had to go through that every day, every time you open Twitter, every time you open Facebook, the algorithm is just pushing this horrible stuff, which is why I think a big part of our job is to flood it with other stuff, you know, organize together and flood it with positivity. My whole practice is about getting money out of the hands of the top dogs and getting it down into the grassroots. And who is at the grassroots but queer people, a lot of trans people. So that's kind of naturally where my practice went. I read about articles all the time. There are studies done about the amount of times like trans women especially are mentioned in the media versus like how many there actually are. It is insanely disproportionate. Yeah. It is like crazy the amount it's talked about. You would think that you know, it's like an epidemic, like a new COVID, and it's just not. It really isn't. And I think the moment people start to actually talk to trans people and actually engage with it, that's what you realize. And I think coming where I come from, so, you know, coming from like a small town, Warsaw, it's interesting you said how you never got taught about it, because I never got taught about it. I don't think I knew what a trans person was until I was, I want to say like 20. Like it was that late, you know, like I was like, and not to mention like evangelical Christian as well, which is like a whole other thing. But it's like transness just was not talked about. And now it's all anyone seems to want to talk about, which is so interesting. I'm like, what's changed between then and now? It's just interesting you're talking about how, you know, statistics always come up. Yeah. And I think they are the biggest enemy. I hate statistics. I hate them so much, because I think whoever's wielding them can, you know, use them for whatever reason and conflate things that just have nothing to do with each other. Like I always love thinking about the left-handed population surge, when suddenly my nan was ambidextrous because she wasn't allowed to be left-handed. They used to smack her hand with a ruler. So she learned how to write with her other hand. And when that started to happen, suddenly the amount of left-handed people shot up in the census and the population. And it would look like you would be like, everyone's turning left-handed. Yeah. And they're not. They're just like, they're just finally being allowed to step in. And I think that's what we observed. Sean Fay says it great. Like she was like, back in 2015, you could have a trans girl as the face of Mac and she would still walk home without getting hate crimed. Yeah. And we had that really nice spike in like sudden acceptance. And then it got too much. Yeah. And then suddenly the media realized. So I think for me, the biggest thing in how to make it better is we've got to start filling the void of like negativeness with like positiveness. And I think that's what my kind of work is. It's about like programming trans work, platforming trans work, commissioning, fundraising for trans work to try and get them part of the narrative. Because that's it. They never are. They're never on the panels. No, absolutely. Yeah. It's really interesting what you say, because in the olden days, I think we knew what a transgender woman was because of that visibility. So if you saw somebody who had to live their life as a man, who then transitioned to living their life as a woman, and you saw them on the other side of the street, there would be signs and you would be like, okay, so that looks like someone who is a transgender woman. And I don't think people realize that trans men existed too. And I think like a decade ago, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh my goodness, the contagion, all girls are trying to be boys. And there was, and just as you say with the left-handedness, it's like a massive influx, massive rise. And I'm like, no, it's just because they're being visible now and they're coming forward, which is amazing. And then non-binary people, you know, and we were saying, oh, what's this new thing of being non-binary? What nonsense, what rubbish. And it's like, no, it's just because now people are being brave enough to come forward and say who they truly are. Yeah. And now it's trans women are back in the news again because we've got some very vicious anti-trans women who are making a lot of noise, and they're winning at the noise. But I want people to understand that they're not winning the battle. They're tiny, very loud, online and offline noise, but they're not representative of
the true world. And I think it's really important.
I always find that every transphobe somehow ends up being a homophobe and somehow ends up being a racist. I think.
And what are they hiding? That's what I know. Which one of those is really upsetting you?
There you go. Know? Do you know what I mean? What's the threat? What's the threat to your life? And it's like, it's a phobia. They live in fear. Yeah. Fear. And when you put a dog in a corner, it bites, and that's all they know how to do. And it's like, it's just, if you just love it.
And it's actually the same for bullies. And, if anyone's listening who feels threatened and bullied every single day, my advice is just ignore them. Because it's the same as the dog in the corner. If you push them, they will bite back. Yeah. If you ignore them, then they'll just slope off and go and lie in their bed again, and have a bit of water and a bone, But I when I see people kind of trying to fight back, trying to explain in socials, I'm like, just leave it. I was watching Matt Walsh the other day, and he had a trans woman who was brave enough in his audience to stand up and try and kind of fight. But he's good at it. He's good at what he does, And he did the what is a woman, why? And she really floundered. And I was like, it was so cruel. It was so cruel because there was no answer to that question.
No.
And it was cruel what he did, and it shouldn't be allowed.
No.
But then you look at how many million views, and I'm like,
but what no one's realizing is the answer is standing in front of you. She stood on her 2 feet looking at you. And what is, it's crazy to me that it's like, put it into words, and it's like, no, there's a lifetime here. Like, there's trans elders, women who have lived in society and contributed and paid their taxes, and they're not pedophiles, they're not perverts, they're none of those things. They've lived. And so that's proof. There's your proof. Yeah. As a life lived. Why has it got to be scrutinized and why has it got to fit into a infographic or whatever?
And I think, again, just to try and, for people listening, give that positive edge. So we've had perhaps since April, a real spike in anti-trans women rhetoric, but it's going to run out because there's only so much you can do. Mm-hmm. You're not coming in my bathroom. Yes, I am. You're not going in my toilet. Yes, I am. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You're not a real woman. Yes, I am. And it's like, well, there's not, what else can I think of? Because do you know what I mean? It's there's just such little to talk about. So they're going to have to move on because the media is going to get a bit bored with this one. So they're going to have to move on to something else. And I think, trans men and people of assigned female at birth have kind of had a bit of a break for the last kind of 6 months because they're not in the limelight, which has been fantastic. But it will wear off. This, and then we can start focusing properly on how to allow everyone to live their best life and the beauty of gender diversity. Yeah. I mean, there's a few people who are willing to learn. Yeah. And sometimes they come to me and they're like, I'm very willing to learn. I'm very open. Can you just answer this? And I'll answer it. And they're like, and I'm like, you're not willing to learn. You
came in with with an agenda. You knew what you wanted to get out of this and you weren't open and you weren't willing. You wanted an answer or you wanted to trip me up.
Yeah.
And I'm not perfect. No one's perfect. I mean, you do a great job. You're very you really do. But no one's going to have the right answer all the time. It's like they're waiting for you to say something that they can snapshot and then throw into the press as Dr. Helen's said this crazy thing. And it's like, it's so exhausting to feel in that spotlight all the time. I mean, there's literally a community of us who are sort of public facing trans, and who get asked to do panels and different things. And it's like, no one lasts more than a year or two doing them because it is so emotionally exhausting to be in those spaces and just have that directed at you and constantly having to think about what to say in the perfect way that both satiates the people who are on the fence. No, satiates the people who are against you and then influences the people that are on the fence. It's like, how the hell are you meant to do that? It's crazy. So with London Trans Plus Pride, a huge thing that we're trying to do is to mobilise allies and the queer trans community. And, that whole LGBT alliance thing, LGBTQ plus will always be the community, and trying to mobilise the community because these women majority, but weirdly grey, some of them are men as well. It's very strange. They are so organised and they have nothing better to do with their time. They've got time and money on their hands to just sit and scroll on the internet and just spew hate and to put court cases forward and to put their money and their pensions and all that stuff towards this cause. And we just want to live. So we're not going to waste our time with that. And actually the hard thing is trying to mobilise the community to sort of fight a little bit, be more organised. It's a really tough one because you're asking people to open wounds that they're trying really hard to close. But a big thing is we're just trying to mobilize people together and get them informed. Just get them informed about what the laws are, what's changing, what's the same, what their rights are, how the Equality Act protects them. So definitely something I think that could help a lot is like organising and informing the community.
Yeah. And having that one voice, isn't it? So am I allowed to challenge my boss if they won't let me go to the bathroom? And some people say yes, some people say no, some people say you got to do this. Well, we need one voice to say no. Yes, of course you must challenge it. Of course you must not accept not being allowed to go to the toilet that matches your gender identity. Even if that person over there keeps saying you're not allowed to, you are allowed to. And we need that voice. And I think once we have that, then we will have courage and strength so that we can have that visibility again, so that we can mobilize people, other people, the people who may not have any trans people in their life, to see and then become informed and educated. And so I'm so excited for when people can feel safe enough to come out and be visible.
Yeah.
So we don't just see trans women on the other side of the road hiding. We see out loud, proud trans people showing us what is the beauty of gender diversity.
Yeah.
That's what I really want to see. I see a lot of people online and offline who just keeping quiet at the moment. They're just kind of watching from afar, maybe saying to each other, that's not very nice, but not speaking up.
Yeah.
So how, and I don't know about this word ally, I don't know. I mean, it's just, we just need to be a better society. I think that's better. So how do we get those people who are currently thinking that's not very nice to maybe be a little bit more verbal about it or support? What would the community like, do you think?
Yeah, it's really interesting because you're born trans, but you're not born an ally. I think that's something. An ally is something that you have to choose to be, and it's something that you have to continue choosing to do. And I think it's a verb, it's a doing word. To ally, like to be an ally, is something that you have to action. I don't think it's something that comes naturally to people. I think we are actually quite brought up, especially in this country, to sort of mind our business.
Yeah.
And I think it goes against us to actually go, no, I'm going to stick my neck out for this person. But it's so powerful when it happens. It's incredible. It's like it goes against all of our cultural nature to stand up and I've been in horrific experiences hate crime, people coming saying they're going to punch me in the face, they're going to attack my girls, we're going to and in public places with people stood there watching, and you have a choice, it's that fight, flight or freeze moment. You go, okay, I fight them or I get help. And who's going to help me here? It's like, I'm trying to put it into words because it's, you almost lock it away after it happens and you talk about it in the past tense. But when you relive it, when you think of that moment where you look around and no one helps you, it's like, it really damages you almost more than the event. Because if in that moment someone could just stand up and say, even I witnessed, I don't step in, but I'm watching, or I can see what you're doing. First of all, you don't feel alone. And second of all, you might actually protect that person from harm. And I think it's so important. I think it's so, so, so important that people who are cis and straight and have had very privileged upbringings choose to be allies, because they're the ones who are most in power. They're the ones who are managing. They're the ones who are in charge. They're the ones who have the money. I know I'm talking into a void here because I'm preaching to the choir. But it's God, I just beg if you're watching this and you see a transphobic, anything, that you just choose to be an ally, and it's got to be a choice.
Yeah. And I think, if I think of examples in my own work and life, someone messaged me recently and said that they'd said, telling an awful story about how they'd been in a pub and someone had gone at them and said, oh, you're a bloke in a dress, all that kind of, she was really upset by it. But then another guy went over to that guy and said, oi, you say sorry. Say sorry right now. And he's like, I'm not fucking saying sorry. You say sorry or else kind of thing. And he was intimidating. You know, the good guy was really intimidating. And he said sorry. And he's like, there you go, off you go. And I was like, wow, that is, and it meant so much to her.
Yeah.
So it diluted the horrible experience she had so much.
It's like, it's insane. I can't even, because it's not comparable. The thing should never have happened.
No.
The attack should never have happened. All of that should never have happened. But because it did, the difference in the two scenarios where no one helped her and someone stood up for her,
everyone just drank their drink.
they're like miles apart.
Yeah, I suppose a middle ground because it is scary. It's a bit like if you see someone being beaten up, do you go over because you're going to risk being beaten up, aren't you? But even just afterwards, going over, someone could go over and say, "Are you okay? I saw that. That was awful. That was just not acceptable. Are you okay? Can I get anyone for you?" So, but just hiding in your drink is not okay. And I think the same, Bobby, about online comments. You know, if you're someone who's reading online comments which are vicious and nasty, if you just read it and don't say anything, are you being complicit? Or would it be better to say, that's not very nice? You don't need an argument. You just go, that's not very nice.
Yeah.
I don't think that's nice. No, that's not acceptable.
Yeah.
And just a little bit, if we saw a little bit more of that, I'd really like it.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because as you're talking about that, I start to think about the cyberbullying assemblies we were given in school, where you would learn about how to stand up for people and it's like when you say bullying, like the you know, Nelson Mandela says it, that, you know, to side with the or to be neutral in situations of oppression is to side with the oppressor. And we're taught that, like, when you see something happening and you do nothing, you are enabling. And that's a really hard thing to tell someone, because they go, no, I'm not. Like, I live a good life. You know, I do anything. And it's like going, no, it's not a reflection on you. It's a moment by moment. Allyship is a choice. It's all the time. It's growing. You're not born an ally. You have to choose to be one. And you're totally right. It's like, are you worried about what your friends think? And are you worried about your reputation? You need to unpack that, because that person is being told that they don't deserve to live, essentially. They're being told that then they're pedophile or something. Do you agree with that? No. Say something.
Yeah.
Because if you don't say anything, you might not be agreeing with it, but you're certainly letting it happen. You're certainly letting it happen.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, that's the truth.
Yeah.
That's just the truth.
It's funny. I mean, not funny. It's not funny at all. It's I see it as well, because I have people who will say to me, "Oh, I love your work. You know, the people you work with are so amazing. I love trans people." But then I hear them saying to other people, "Oh God, it's a bit ridiculous, isn't it?" You know, and I'm like, no, "Hey, hang on a minute. Hang on a minute. That's not very nice of you to pretend one thing to one of it. You're pretending to one of us. Which one is it?" And it's not nice. It's not ingenuous, is it?
I totally agree. I think it's, but then you're like, I don't want to tell people about their morals, and I actually don't care enough. I don't want to teach you. I'm not your mom. I'm not your therapist. So it's like, why should I like work hard to change your ways? It's a really weird line. But then you're like, if I change one person, hopefully they change another. And so, you know, it's like you're being torn in two ways, where you're like, I don't care. I just want to live. But then it's like my responsibility to kind of better society. Yeah. So that in the hopes that when there's another kid who's like me, who's coming up in a small town in the middle of nowhere and has got no idea who they are, and no one seems to know the word for what they are, and no one that they can step in and be that person, because it's really tough. It's really tough to grow up like that. Yeah. And you carry that with you for life, for sure. And
what you've done, by the sounds of things, is channel that energy into making sure that it doesn't happen for others, which is a beautiful channel.
And we're all fighting that. Trans women, you know, lesbians, like queer women, were on the front lines of that movement, trying, you know, to like say that women are like, you know, sisterhood. And like, if you go into the trans community, sisterhood and motherhood are so deeply a part of that. You have mothers of like, you have trans mothers, you have daughters who raise each other and teach you how to do your makeup and your hair and how to dress for your body. And when you get broken up with, your family, you know what I mean? It's like that, like almost ephemeral experience is within the community as well.
Well, I think it extends even further than that, because obviously I come from a medical background, and so I see things from the medical side. And when I was learning about this, I'm like, DIY. I'd never heard of DIY before. Like, what? What do you mean DIY? You can't have people
off the dark web
buying their stuff off the internet. I'm like, no, it's just
do.
like, oh my goodness. And then you had trans people being the doctor saying, oh, this is what you need to do. And I'm like, well, I know that's really, really helpful, but I was scared. And then I met a trans support group, Jenny Bishop, and she had a house that trans women would go to after surgery to be looked after because they weren't being looked after properly. And they had to make it themselves. And they weren't nurses or healthcare professionals, but they had learned what to do and how to look after it. So this community, like you say, with mothers and daughters and grandparents and
sisters
doctors and nurses and psychologists and prescribers, I'm like, goodness gracious. And it's lovely, but also I kind of think I wish we could just have it mainstream as well. I wish the world was accepting enough that we could just be mainstream about this.
Yeah, for sure. And the moment you boil it down to biology, the like female sisterhood falls apart as well. You know, like there are women who don't have periods. There are women who don't have wombs. My mum went through breast cancer. She had a mastectomy. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, where does the line lie? Why do you get to be like, oh, if you can't give birth, you don't have periods, and you don't have breasts, you're not a woman. And it's going, where the hell, like what, from? Like, you know, the feminism movement of the 80s would scream at someone saying this, but somehow it's okay these days.
And do you know what I think it is? Because they've got so few arguments. They're like, let me think, what's a woman?
Yeah.
And, oh, well done, very clever, because no one's got the answer to that question. There isn't an answer to that question. No. And a woman is someone who says, I'm a woman. Yeah. End of story.
And here's this doctor's like paper or this one scientist's paper in like Illinois from like 2013 that proves my point. And it's like...
I know. But they've got such little to go on that they grasp these ridiculous notions. And actually, if we sat them down sensibly and said, are you actually saying that you think women have to have a womb and breasts and eggs and reproductive capability and X chromosomes? Are you actually saying that?
Yeah.
That they would be like, oh no, I'm not.
Yeah, no.
But they're too proud.
Yeah, no. They would be like, no, but my point is that I feel threatened by society and the patriarchy. So like women have to stick together. And you're going, okay, there's the problem. I want there to be trans women and trans men who can just hide away.
Mingle.
Get a house and a cottage in the countryside and just be, and they don't have to step forward. Whereas again, in my practice, I think so often trans people feel like they have to be very autobiographical in their work, in their creativity, in what they do. They have to confess themselves and bring themselves because it's their truth. So it's going like, here I am, I'm true because this is a real story. And there's kind of a tragedy in that where it's like, why should you have to dig your personal information, dig your history out just to prove to a society that you should be allowed to exist?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I always think like, yeah, we are fighting for that like trans female CEO, but we're also fighting for like that.
Just a CEO, nothing to see here.
Yeah, there you go.
Doesn't matter.
There
just a CEO, that's me. And I just want to see people not have to hide. I don't think they have to shout and wear flags and say, I'm trans, but I just want them to see part of society just mingling together. And I think the other thing that I learnt as well is that it's got to evolve. It's not a press the button, you were that and now you're that. You've got, if you know, parents are listening now or partners or teachers, allow the space for it to evolve and let it change and let it go really far that way and then maybe pull back a bit and then, oh, what about over there? And that's not uncertainty. It's just finding people, and it might change. It might change in your 20s and your 30s. Your kind of identity doesn't change, but how you want to wear it and live it and see it and live it.
Yeah.
Let that develop. And we, as professionals, as healthcare professionals, or politicians, people in the work, we need to give that space. And research should be focused on how best to allow people to have that space to be themselves.
Yeah.
Not 3% of people are going to regret this. Ugh.
Yeah, I hear you. I totally hear you. I mean, you know, like you get that one, it's like more people regret their Harry Potter tattoos than they regret like being trans. More people,
definitely.
More people regret hip replacements. More people, you know, it's like we have these in place, but no one ever talks about them. It's all about transness. And I totally right. And I love that about the liminality of it. And like, it's your life, and we change so much. We change biologically our whole life. There's entire processes going on within us. But like, if it's like something to do with gender, suddenly that's not okay. Suddenly it's not right.
I had a man the other day who messaged me and said, I didn't know that they were on socials, and she said, "Can I just ask you something?" And I'm like, "Of course you can." and she said, "My son has been living as a male like since kind of age 5, and he's going to university. And he said the other day, I don't know if he was assigned female at birth, and he said, I don't know if I can do this. I might go back to being a girl." And she was like, "Oh my God, what have I done? I've allowed him to do this all my life, and what have I done? Have I wrecked him? Have I spoiled him?" I said, "Just fine. Give him space to just explore." And I've seen so many people who want to try out their birth gender maybe one more time, or maybe 2 more times, just to see, because you don't know. And I really don't think that people should think, if I come out, I must honour this and go along this trajectory forever. I think we should just allow people to explore. And if you want to try out your birth gender one more time, try it out again. See if it fits.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, it doesn't. If it does, it does. What have we lost?
It's just not monolithic. It's just not one size fits all, and never has been. And I think like feminism teaches us that about what a woman is in the general sense, and not defining a woman by her, organs or by her features. And it's like, why doesn't that extend? We can all learn lessons from that. That is the core. I think everyone can learn from that. The idea that like when society starts to define you, that's when it's all going wrong. And it makes me really sad that that's all been mangled up into this weird anti-trans rhetoric, when actually I think they are so much more alike than different. And because like if you look at like queer women, like lesbians and dyke culture, playing around with your gender and your expression has always been a part of that, and expressing yourself in different ways and then going back and forward and you said it earlier, just allowing space. I don't think it's about pronouns. I don't think it's about all that stuff. I think it's just about space and acceptance and freedom and openness. And it's like, if you give that to someone, they're going to give that back to you. And I think that's what no one realizes is these TERFs, because they're so trapped. They're like, I don't want to give anything away because I suffer daily. My life is hell. And it's going, it doesn't have to be. You don't have to feel like that. You can also be a part of this movement of freedom and liberation and, and freedom and liberation. Yeah. You have a place in that.
I saw someone online the other day, and she was like, "Oh my God, you trans women, you don't know what it's like to have periods. You don't know what it's like. You don't know the monthly trauma that I have." And she's really giving it one on like that. And all I could think of, you're so selfish. There are so many trans women who would give anything to have a womb and a monthly cycle and the ability to carry a baby. And I just thought, you are so selfish in your attitude. And I think that's what we have to see it as. You mentioned it just then. It is pure selfishness to deny or not accept somebody else. It's not your place that denial or acceptance doesn't belong with you. It's not yours to own. And what I try and do as well is showcase that although it's very loud, that's not the majority.
Yes.
So the majority of trans people are able to be happy in their home and in their family and in their... I know it's difficult, but there are so many happy people. And I know they're not shouting loudly, because every time they shout loudly, they might get bullied. But there are... And I really want to share the beauty and the positivity as well, because sometimes it's quite easy to get focused on the negative, isn't it? And all that does is give those nasty women and stupid men a bigger platform. So we don't listen to those. Let's showcase the beauty and love. And I get some parents who message me and really struggling, and I'm like, you shouldn't have to struggle like this as a parent. And I get others who tell me, do you know what, my daughter is living her best life. She's got through it. She's living over there with them, doing this, and I'm just there is good out there as well.
Absolutely. My partner's trans, and he meeting his mom and learning, Nicola, God bless Nicola, she's amazing. Such an incredible example of someone that just believed and stood by it. And I've heard her talk about after a day of calling your trans child by their right pronouns and buying them their clothes, you lie in bed and you're like, because they're happy, you're happy, the family's together, you have trust. So who gives a crap what society thinks? Because you're like, that exists, or you can fight it and you can be the enemy and you can listen to what these people say online and everything breaks apart and no one's their true selves. You're not your true self either. I think that's the hardest thing is I think these people who are so against it are so trapped in their bodies and their minds that transness is such a threat to them because transness represents, you know, it represents choosing something other than what you are told you are. And I think that is a huge threat to like, I mean, you know, we want to get into it, but like capitalism, the patriarchy, all of it, it threatens everything we knew up to this point is that, oh, wait, I don't have to be that. I can be something else. I can transform. I can transition, you know, and seeing that process with my partner and his mom, I'm just like, it just, when I think about it, it makes me so emotional. It's like, if I did have a trans child, like I would like, you know, I would love to do that for them. Yeah. I would love to just support, because he's amazing now. He's like an incredible artist who's like working. And I just like, there's another universe where that didn't happen. And it's just, I don't, you know what I mean? It's so inspiring.
Yeah. I mean, positive stories of people who are now living authentically are just the best. And going back to the children that you mentioned a minute ago, you know, I've seen families, and often by the time they would come and see me in my clinic a few years ago, they'd been through that. So they'd been through the denial and the no, we're not doing this, and no, you'll get bullied, and no, you can't do that, and no, you're not a boy, and no, we're not using that, and no, we're not changing your name, and yes, you are having long hair, blah, blah, blah. And then when they get over that fight and they give in and they go, oh, come on, bloody hell, let's just do it. The whole family changes, everything, the whole dynamic. The house lights up again. Everyone is happy. And the child has gone from being under the bed in the bedroom for the whole time, out, downstairs. And I'm like, and they're like, why didn't I do this earlier?
Yeah. And that's not surgery. That's not your hormones. No. It's like, it's a choice to trust and believe. Yeah. And I think that's what, like, if you read online, you know, you would think that like that choice is like to put them through this like insane long medical journey. The choice is just to go, I believe you. Yeah. Like I trust you. And like to have that instilled in you from a young age is, I mean, like, you know, I was gay, like I am gay and queer, and it was the same thing. You know, oh, like don't make that decision too. Oh, don't do that. You'll get bullied. You'll get And it's like, it's all bullshit. You know, it's all bullshit. Like, it's like who you are is who you are, and you're born the way you are. And it's just recycled homophobia. And, you know, I knew I was like trans from day dot. Like, if you gave me a dress, I would have worn that all day. You know, like when I wanted to wear the Power Rangers, it was always the girl Power Rangers. Like, you know, you just know. And I was lucky enough to be part of groups and a family who allowed that, you know. But the idea of someone doing that and a parent going like, you're transing my child. Oh God. And it's like, it's actually got nothing to do with you. Like you couldn't have stopped. I mean, you know, people tried to stop me, but like it was within me. It was what I wanted.
I think it's really vicious actually. When people say it to me, they say, you're an activist and you're making things worse. And I'm like, I'm not an activist. I'm just somebody who loves talking about my favourite subject, which happens to be gender identity and how we can make the world better and how we can make healthcare better for trans people. I don't call myself an activist. And then they say, and I definitely don't think I'm making things worse. And then they say to parents, you know, you're transing your child. And I'm like, you just honestly could not think it was anything further away than that. You're just cruel to think that.
The layers that you're putting into that kid's psyche of like worthlessness, doubt, fear, lack of love, you know, oh, I have to present a certain way to be loved. What is that going to do? You better pay for the therapy that they're getting in 15 years because like it's on you.
Exactly.
Or you can not be that.
Yeah. I was talking to a therapist once who worked with trans children. She was amazing. She's from Los Angeles. And she was saying that so many parents say, listen, okay, look, let's try this at home. It's okay. Let's do it at home, but let's not do it when we go to the shops or school. Yeah. And she said, well, all you're doing is teaching them that it's not safe to be yourself outside the home. And that's not true. We have to teach them that you're safe everywhere.
And that I won't protect you.
Yeah.
And that you go, you do this, I'm putting this in place. That's your fault.
Yeah.
And what an insane mess, like you should be like, we're going. And if someone says something, you stand up, and you'd have to scream and throw stuff at them, but you just have to go, not your business, my child, thank you very much. Let's go. Instead of basically telling them you're on your own when this happens. And it's why the queer community, like, it's why we have families, because you don't get that support from your family, but we will, like the queer family will stand up, we will fight back. And it's like, then you start to realize that you're not on your own.
Yeah. And I mean, community is so important. And then other people will say, well, yeah, but if you go there, then you're all going to turn trans. And I'm like, it's not. No. Well, maybe they just have something in common, and then they support each other and love each other. And that's why they found each other. But they always seem to have some argument, don't they, for, against it. But they're just silly.
Yeah.
When I look at the kind of the early 20s trans people now, they're fixing it. They're living their life. They're like, this is
the children,
me.
the kids
really love that.
Yeah.
We've got some of our gender GP members coming in this afternoon to meet. Cool. And I love their stories and their bravery.
Yeah.
To be authentic and be themselves.
Well, with London Trans Plus Pride, we support the work of like organisations like Trans Kids Deserve Better, who are just, oh my God, like if you want to be inspired, go to one of their marches. It is the most incredible thing to watch these kids, teens, like just taking up arms and being like, we're not going to let this happen to us. And you go, God, thank God. Because we somehow did, but they're not, and I think it's so inspiring. Yeah. And it's like, hell yeah, whatever you need, I'm there. I've got you.
Yeah.
We'll help.
Yeah.
You call up the stuff that's happening, and it's our duty to support them and to help them.
Yeah. And then the real youngsters, the ones that have the freedom to just be young kids in their... I used to go to the Mermaids residentials.
Oh, yeah.
And, oh, my God, they were so gorgeous. Like, the mums and dads would be in one room, all just chatting, like, just sharing stories like, oh, my God, and sharing joy. And the kids would be out playing. No one restricting them at all in their expression and play and dressing up and being themselves and trying it out. It was so beautiful.
Yeah, for sure.
I was watching Lost Boys and Fairies. Have you seen it?
No.
Oh my God.
Sounds great though.
Oh, you can tell by the title.
Sounds very up my street.
It was based in Wales as well, which is where I'm from. And so the two gay guys on there, honestly, I was in floods of tears, wasn't I? And but the queer community that you saw around them portrayed in that, I was just like, I want to be there. I want to go to this clubs. I want to go to this parties. It was just so vibrant and alive. And then I think of like grey people out for dinner, like the man and the woman in their suit and dress, and I'm like, you're missing out on such fun.
You're missing out on life. You really are, and because that's what queerness is all about. Queerness, and it's about seeing another world and entering it. And, and you're totally right. It's why this is why I went into producing and making work. And the work I make, people come away and they're like, that was incredible. And it's because queer is culture. Yeah. Queer people make culture. They always have done. I think you're so right. It's like, I just want to take a turf and take her to the club.
Yeah.
Just take her out and see what happens. And by the end of it, I'll be like, do you have a good time? And she'd be like, yeah.
Maybe.
And I'd be like, exactly, come on, girl, come on. Like, there's a place for you as well. Like, if you choose it, but if you don't, then, fuck off. When
Exactly. But it's always been through music. Well, not always, but I think back to the late 70s and the 80s when I was being very influenced by music.
Yeah.
That was my era for pop music. And it was so much fun. And, you look at those rock bands with their hair and their makeup and their glitter and it was just amazing. And it was all fine then. So why is it not fine now?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Well,
we loved it. We were so jealous.
Yeah. I mean, trans elders talk about how it was easier in the 70s and the 80s than it is in 2025.
Yeah.
That's literally what they talk about. And that is, to say that about anything is truly insane. Yeah. I think trans people and queer people in general are so exploited by media and by culture that I think I set up my practice as a way to being like, I as a trans person, as a queer person, are going to spearhead this project and make sure that we are safe in this space. And again, it's like, I want to go into the details of like pronouns, like all that, but it's bigger than that. It's so much bigger than that. It's like a choice and a holding of that. And that's what I try and hold or that's what I try and do through my practice, is just make space, make accepting, accessible, hopeful space.
Yeah. And we'll get there. We
yeah.
will get there. Hopefully in our lifetimes.
Yeah.
Hopefully sooner. We will get there.
Yeah. I truly hope so.
We will. We will. Okay. Well, it's so nice to talk to you. Really, really lovely. Thank you for coming over.
Thank you for having me. I loved it. I was saying outside, I was like, being not from London, any excuse to get out is like a dream. So anytime, anytime.
Thank you. So nice
and thank you for your work.
No,
I
love
think
it.
it's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video has helped you. And I think you're going to like this one that's on the screen right now.